Every year, people from all over the country visit Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California. Located on the border of the Colorado and Mojave Deserts, the park offers individuals a chance to experience the unique animals and plants of the desert. But we wanted something more than just to visit the main attractions. We wanted to be fully immersed in this unique wilderness to experience it completely. And fully immersed we were. With no reliable water sources in the area, we had to learn how to cache water along our route in our first ever backpacking trip in the desert. There are many things that we did not know to know, and so our full immersion experience turned out to be even more harrowing than expected as we faced deadly cold in the infamous Rattlesnake Canyon. Listen to the story of our 4-day desert expedition and watch to the end to see what we learned through our wild experience.
One thing we can count on when we go backpacking is rain. We don't like it, but that is how it is. We can't go on an expedition without donning our raincoats and spending at least some time under the tarp. We have come to accept it, sort of. This time, though, would be different. This time, we were going to the desert, where it was sure to be dry, sunny, and warm. This time, there would be no rain. In fact, there would be no water at all. There would be no water at all unless we brought the water. We would have to bring the water for all of our drinking, cooking, and washing. We would have to carry 224 pounds of water into the desert several days before our trip and hide it. We would have to hide it to keep it from ravens and rodents and people, and hope that it would still be there for us to use when we arrived to set up camp. Caching, it is called. We cached all of this water in 2 different places and marked the cache points on our map. And we went home and packed for our trip and thought how wonderful it would be to have no rain. And it didn't rain. It didn't rain one bit, and it was dry and clear the whole time. The sun blazed brightly through the day, and the stars sparkled dazzlingly all night long. All night long. And all of the night was long. Because although we were spared the rain, we were not spared the suffering that must accompany us on our adventures. Without suffering, there is no adventure. Indeed, without suffering, there is no story to share. Yes, we were spared the rain, but not the suffering, and so we had cold. And although rain is a persistent foe, cold is a cruel one. Rain erodes our sanity, drip by endless drip. Tapping, tapping, tapping on the hoods of our raincoats, on the roofs of our tents, on our patience. But cold seeps with savage ferocity into every corner of our bodies. Cold threatens to stop us, to finish us. Of course, these things, cold and rain, are not alive, and yet I give them a proper name, because while they afflict us, they seem to be alive. They seem to be living things bent on destroying us. This cold hit us on the first night. The first long night. It met us after an exhausting hike in, after we had almost turned back. Yes, we had almost turned back early in the day, because when we stopped for a rest, I had bent over my bag and felt a tremendous jab on the top of my head. As I pulled my hat off, blood began gushing down over my face and in great crimson drops on the sandy ground. There was blood on my bag, blood on my hat, blood on my face, and blood matted in my hair. I looked up to see a large yucca plant, like a man holding 100 swords, standing over me in apparent triumph. We eventually stopped the blood and cleaned up as best we could and wrapped the small puncture wound. And we almost turned around and went home then. Maybe we should have, but we didn't. We didn't turn back, but instead kept going, and we met cold.
And we're really cold.
We knew it would be cold. We had prepared for the cold. But we did not know yet that there is a thing called a temperature inversion that would turn our cozy campsite, tucked in a valley out of the wind, into a cradle of torture. We did not know that on clear nights the cold can sink down into the valleys and sit there, sometimes reaching temperatures that are much lower than those on the slopes above. We did not know about any of this, and so cold took us by surprise. It was so cold that even in 2 pairs of wool socks, a double layer of long underwear, a fleece, gloves, and a wool hat, all of this tucked inside our sleeping bags and topped with an extra blanket, we were still shivering. Shivering all that long night. Shivering and praying that we would not die of hypothermia. In the morning, we waited in our tents until the sun came up, and then we all unzipped the flaps, sending a shower of frozen condensation into our shoes, which sat outside. We all walked around and talked about the cold. We marveled at the power of the cold. We rubbed our hands and blew into them and laughed as we got out our toothbrushes, stiff and frozen. We put our water in the sun and waited for the solid bottles to melt, enough for us to use a small bit at a time. Slowly, the sun warmed us enough that we could move about and do our camp chores and heat up some breakfast. We ate and discussed our plans. Originally, our goal for today had been to hike several more miles on the loop we had started yesterday, moving our camp to a place higher up and near Quail Mountain, which we would summit on the 3rd day. But we were stiff and sore and tired from shivering all night, and we assumed that if we camped higher, we would be even colder. Remember that we did not yet know about temperature inversions. So we decided to leave our tents where they were and spend the day doing some light exploring. Then we would be fresh the next day to climb the mountain and hike to the water supply we had cached for the 3rd night. We had a nice day, scrambling around in a canyon and even taking a short nap in a sandy wash. But we could not forget that cold was coming, that this night we would meet cold again and endure the long night again and wake up frozen again. We talked once more about packing everything up and going home. Back the 14 miles we had come on the 1st day. Back in the dark and through the cold. Back to all of the comforts of our trailer. But we didn't want to give up. We wanted to stick with this thing we had decided to do. To complete the loop and see all the things and see if we could do this. If we could do this together. And so we stayed. We endured through another long night with cold. This time was a little better though, because we knew what to expect. And this time we put on even more warm clothes. In the morning, we packed up our frozen gear and set out to conquer Quail Mountain via our own route. Using a topographical map, we planned to follow the network of spurs and ridges that rose to the summit. It was not a hard climb, except that cold met us again at the top with his helper, wind. Still, it was a beautiful summit. Mixed in with the rocks on the summit were the twisted pieces of metal that still remained from a plane crash that had occurred 15 years ago. 15 years ago, when someone else had been taken by the weather and by suffering, but thankfully they had survived. It was fun to search for a route up the mountain and then to hike down into a rocky canyon. All of the way was interesting, but it was longer than we had anticipated, so we were still hiking through the sunset and into the night. Our route took us down the wash that wound toward a road that we would need to cross. As we approached the road, but as we were still high above it, we turned on our headlamps. We put them on red light so that we could still view the stars. We noticed a bright, penetrating light flashing toward us from the vicinity of the road. It was so bright that we had to shield our eyes from it. At first, we thought that maybe it was someone playing around, but then it became obvious that the light was meant for us. Someone was shining that beam on us on purpose, and they were coming toward us. We stopped where we were and waited as the light, almost unbearably bright, approached. It was a park ranger. He told us that when he saw our perfect row of red lights inching steadily along above the road, he thought we were a set of drones. After we had satisfied him that we were not, in fact, drones, but simply a family that had bitten off a little more than they could chew, he left us and disappeared into the darkness. Finally, we reached our water cache that we had already placed there for our third night. We sat up in the dark and collapsed on our sleeping pads, happy that although this night was also cold, it was not nearly as cold as the previous 2 nights. Indeed, before this trip, we would have considered this night to be unbearably cold. But now that we had met cold, true cold, we had a new standard by which to judge the level of our suffering. In the morning, we felt refreshed and excited to tackle this last day. Excited because this day, the mileage was shorter, and we would have time to climb around on the many rock formations that rose up out of the desert. Excited for the scrambly route at the end through the infamous Rattlesnake Canyon. Excited because this day we would be going home, back to hot showers and a toasty fireplace and soft, warm beds. We estimated that after enjoying the canyon, we would arrive at the car and be home before dark. And as usual, our estimate was wrong. We took our time at first. We had all day, after all, and enjoyed the challenge of tackling a handful of rock walls. After getting some fun pictures on the rocks, we took a long break and headed towards Rattlesnake Canyon, happily chatting as we went. Just before the canyon, we took another long break to rest and eat lunch. Finally, in spite of the ominous sign, we decided to start down through the canyon and head home. But as we continued, we had to check the map more and more often. There was nothing to mark any sort of trail, and we frequently had to backtrack. At one point, we came to the top of a cliff where we could go no further. No further, that is, without flying. And so we had to retrace our steps for a long way to find the correct route. The day was fading fast, and the terrain became insane. Some places were so steep, we had to remove our packs and pass them down before climbing down after them. At one point, we had to take a great leap over a deep, dark crevasse. More than once, we had to shimmy and wiggle through a tight space amongst the boulders. Our fingers became rough and raw as we clawed our way up the steep rocks. Our arms became stiff as we lowered our bodies down again and again. Our legs became achy and weak as they pushed us up and down and over and under the endless, eternal rocks. Just when we thought that surely we must be almost finished with this new thing that seemed intent on ruining us, finished with this thing that we had chosen to do, I caught a glimpse through a notch of the valley below. The broad, flat valley with the road winding through it. The road with a small parking lot beside it that held our van, our escape. And that valley was still over 1,000 feet below us. As the sky grew darker, we turned on the few headlamps that still had some battery power left in them. We looked at each other with wide, fearful, exhausted eyes, and we knew that we would not spend this night out here in the cold and amongst the boulders. We would set aside the fear and the pain and the weakness. We would pack it up out of the way, and we would do this job of surviving, of making it home tonight. And we kept going. We prayed and kept going, and we prayed and kept going. As we lost our way twice more, we retraced our steps and found the right way and kept going. As we encountered more impossible obstacles, we helped each other maneuver them, and we kept going. As the night enclosed around us, we kept going. One pitch of rock at a time, one boulder or ledge at a time, one step at a time, one breath at a time. Eventually, we made it back to the road. We congratulated each other quietly, and we began to walk, to hobble, down the road towards the car. We walked through a campground where people were cooking hot dogs. Delicious, sizzling hot dogs. We walked past their cozy fires and their fluffy blankets and their strings of lights. We followed the road as it cut across a wide expanse of desert. Far ahead of us, thousands of lights sparkled and glittered. Lights from stores and homes and cars and signs shone like a field of stars and met the stars of the sky that were scattered above us with all their familiar shapes.
You did it!
And finally, we were rushing toward our big white van and peeling off our bags and piling into our cushioned seats. As we drove home to all of our comforts, we were glad. We were glad as we stopped to pick up pizza and as we burned our tongues on the gloriously hot, cheesy slices. We were glad as the van took us closer and closer to home. As the suffering of the cold and the wind and the boulders and the blood faded quickly into a memory, we thought that we would never again put ourselves through this. Never again would we decide to suffer. And at the same time, we felt a weight of sadness inside, a sorrow, a realization that we would miss the suffering. We would miss this suffering and what it taught us and how it brought us together. And then we knew that we would do this again, that we would choose this again, that we would go together into the wilderness and suffer, and at the same time see the beauty and feel alive in a way that we could not at home. Wonder how we got from this to this to this? The journey has not always been so fun and exciting as you see on our videos, but through it all, our experiences are teaching us to trust in the God who takes care of his children. Read our story in our upcoming book, Expect the Unexpected, available soon.